So let's put them down. So the next thing I need to do is make sure that my buttons actually my labels to my some actions, because right now they don't.
My test
I just created outlets, and the reason why I created outlets is because all three of these buttons, the fizz, soda, and pop buttons, are all going to use the same method. And I know a lot of tutorials out there, stuff like that, they actually create actions for each of the buttons, but there's actually an easier way to do it. So I'll actually show you how to do that. So first thing I need to do is write a test. So function function test game play buttons have actions assigned to them after view did load called. Okay, let me squish that back because it's really long again. So yeah, see, it's really long. Maybe I should just do let's do buttons. Because I know I'm talking about which buttons I'm talking about. There's only 3 buttons, so there's no need to get all fancy. Alright, so how do I see if a button has an action? Well, if we go ahead, let's go ahead and create fizz button action. Just a constant because it's not going to change. I'm actually going to look at the properties of this button. So what do I need to do? I need to call system under test, which is my ViewController, and then I need to call the fizz button, and then a period, and I can get a lot of different information about my button. And one of the things I need to do is I need to look under let's see if I can type it. So fizz button dot interactions, that's what I need. So it's an array of interactions for the view, or for the button in this case. Again, if you have any questions about anything, just hold down that option key until your cursor turns to a plus. If it turns into a question mark, you can click it, and we can look at what interactions are. It's an array of interactions for the view, and in this case, it's the actual button itself. And let's do the same thing for all the other buttons. And now I'm going to see if it's null or not. So I'm going to do xct assert not nil. And I'm just going to call the fizz button action. So button should have an action. Save that. Now I'm just going to do copy and paste for the other 2. Save, and let's run this.
Test succeeded.
Alright, so that was not supposed to happen, because every time you do a test, you're supposed to do a failing test. So I need to figure out what exactly I need to be looking for UI buttons. So I'm going to go into the documentation and try to see if I can find something for targets or actions. So let me look at my UI control, which is the super class of UI button, and see if I can find anything in here. And that's one of the things you have to do, is you kind of have to look to see what you're missing. So I do plan on adding add targets. So I think that's probably what I need to look for is to find something that will show me all of its targets. And there we go. It's a set. So I'm going to go ahead and tack that onto it. And now I gotta change my assert statement, and I'm going to comment out the other two just to make sure that I get this first one right, because I want it to pass, or I want it to fail, but fail right. So I'm going to do assert equal. I'm going to put a count on that set, all targets, and run it.
Test failed.
All right, perfect. So I got a failing test, and that's the way I want it to be.
Okay, so if we do all targets and all targets and should actually equal 1, should have a target. So let's go ahead and copy this. Paste, and do it for my other actions. Save, and if I run, it's going to fail, which I already know.
Test failed.
Okay, so I have to create some targets here. So and my view did load. Since I'm using one method to basically use for all of my buttons, I'm just going to create a target for all 3 of them. So I'm going to do fizz button dot add target. And what add target is, it associates a target object and action method with the control. In this case, the control is the button. So let's go ahead and do that. And the target is self. And the action I haven't created yet, but I'm going to do hash selector. And it's going to be called button tapped. It's going to be the name of the method. And for what event, and this is going to be touch up inside, and it's a touch event where the finger is the bounds of the control. That's what that means. I'm going to save that, and then it's going to give me an error probably because I haven't created my button tapped. Yep, a result identifier. What is that? So let's go ahead and create that. So I'm going to do at object C function and do button tapped, and this is going to only be for a sender that is a UI button, so nothing else can use it unless it's a UI button. So that's the only parameter, and then it's going to do some work. So the sender is basically just the UI button. So since it's a UI button, what I can do is I can call its tag. So I say if sender dot tag equals, in this case for fizz it's 3, it's its tag number, and that's what I set in storyboard. So if I go back to storyboard and we look at 3, the tag that I sent it to was 3, or that I set it to. And then going back, we just say print the hello fizz and save. Okay, let's try this again.
Test failed.
Alright, it failed because I haven't set the what should happen with soda in action. I haven't set that yet. So this action actually worked. And that was basically just to show you that once you add a target, it actually does look at all the targets. So let's go ahead and do the same thing for the other three, or the other two buttons. And in this case, since I've already created the button tapped action, I don't have to worry about doing it again. I just have to set the add target to whatever button I need to set it to. So paste that in, save that, and run my test again.
Test succeeded.
All right, there we go. So I've set the action for that, which is awesome. All right, so the last test I'm going to do for this video is I'm going to make sure that when a button is tapped, that it updates the corresponding label. So if we look back at the main storyboard, I have my labels right above my buttons. So what happens when the player hits 3 is that the fizz label will appear, and say if they hit 7, the pop will appear. But if they don't hit 5, the soda label is not going to show. So basically what this is that it's going to allow me to compare what the user chose against what the gameplay is supposed to be, or the game logic, what the actual solution is. So let's go ahead and test that. So I'm going to create another test, so function test buttons, because I'm going to test all the buttons, are updating their labels. Okay. So how am I going to do that? Well, I call system under test, do dot, and then I do my fizz button, and then I send actions. So what I'm doing is I'm sending an action to the button to do something, and since I'm not actually tapping it, in the app itself, I actually have to do this in code. So basically it needs to send an action, and that action is a touch up inside. So it should call my button tapped method when this happens. And when this happens, what should occur is that the fizz label should update to fizz. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's do xct assert equal, and then I'm going to do system under test sut fizz label dot text is equal to fizz, and then let's do message tapping button should change its corresponding label. Save, and let's go ahead and try that out.
Test failed.
And it failed. That's what I expected, because it's not what I set it for. So, so looking here, it does go through, but it just prints out hello fizz. So what I need to do is I need to set the fizz label dot text equal to fizz. Let's go ahead and save that. Let's run.
Test succeeded.
And there we go. So now my action, so I called the action that was added as a target to my fizz button, did a touch up inside to activate it, and went down here and had the sender tag of 3, and then it set the label to fizz. All right, so I'm going to do the same thing for my other actions. I'm going to speed through this.
Test failed.
Okay, and that's what I expected to happen. So now I have to do the same thing for my sender tag. So if sender.tag is equal to 5, then I'm going to do soda label dot text equals, sorry, I forgot to do soda and pop here. It would have still filled anyway because I didn't have any of this set up. So if sender tag equals 7, then it's the pop label. Okay.
Test succeeded.
All right, that's great. So another thing about test-driven development is basically the idea, I think I did this in my last video when I showed you how to integrate XC tests into Playground, is that the idea is you first have a failing test. Then you make it pass. So failing means red, obviously. When it fails, it turns red and yells at you. Well, it doesn't necessarily yell at you unless you set it, which actually I can show you how to do that right now. It's under Preferences. And then if you go into Behaviors and then Testing, when it fails, you can select a speaking announcement. I chose Yuri because, you know, Yuri sounds very mean. So, and so basically when it fails, you try and make it pass, which turns it green. Now, what I'm going to introduce is refactoring. And I believe I did this for the last video where I had a lot of stuff going on and it just, you know, just repeating stuff. So this is really not very clean. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do a switch statement on the sender. And so now that I know that I have passing tests, I can go ahead and refactor and then test again. So I'm going to do switch sender, and the case is 3. Then I want to do fizz label text equals fizz. Sorry, sender tag, that's why it's yelling at me, hey, this is not an integer. All right, now it should be fine. Perfect, and it's giving me switch must be exhaustive, so I just keep on going. And then soda label. Pop label. And I guess I will do a default. What is it saying? Default should have, oh, just insert break. Okay. Let's just do break. All right, yeah, because there shouldn't be any other tags because I've only assigned 3. So we'll just do that. Okay, so let's go ahead and delete all this. Go ahead and save, and let's run our test again to make sure that what I refactored actually works.
Test succeeded.
And it does, which is great. Okay, so I lie. I'm going to do one more test. And that test is to make sure that if the label is tapped, or if the button is tapped once, it shows the text in the label, and then if it's tapped again, it makes the text disappear. Because hey, I mean, if the player changes their mind, they should be able to tap it again and remove it. So let's go ahead and write one last, for real, last test. So, buttons will clear label if label has a has value or has text. There you go. Make it a little bit more clear. Okay. All right. So again, I'm going to do sct fizz button and do my send action. Touch up inside. And then I can actually just copy this here because I know this should work. And then if I do fizz button again, send an action, then what it should do is it should clear it. So I'm going to copy that, but instead of having the fizz, it should be empty. So then save that and let's run it.
Test failed.
Yep, and that's what I expected because I have no code for that. So let's create some. So how am I going to do this? I can do an if statement and do all that, but I am actually going to do a shortened version of an if statement and just do it in line. So let's see. Fizz label is equal to empty, then it should fill it with fizz, otherwise it should be empty. Go ahead and save that. Fizz label text, sorry, that's why it's yelling at me. Okay, so now I'm going to test my shortened if statement, make sure that it passes.
Test succeeded.
All right, so it did. So it started and passed. Okay, so I will go ahead and repeat this for the other 3 buttons. Okay, save, and let's run this again.
Test failed.
Yep.
So now I'm going to do the same thing, do the shortened if statement.
Let's run this again.
Test succeeded.
Okay, so yep, everything looks good. All right, so as good measure, let's run all of our tests.
Test succeeded.
All right, so I didn't break anything that I've built before. Okay, so I got a lot done. So let's do one last thing. Let's actually run it in simulator. All right, so if I touch 3, it should show fizz. If I untouch it, it removes it. Here we go. Awesome. And it sets the time label and the score label to 0, which is exactly what it should do. And there we go. So hopefully you have found this informative. If so, give it a thumbs up. If you want to be notified when I upload another video, you have to subscribe. And if you want access to all of my code for this, as well as a preview of other videos and the code and frameworks and parts of the Swift language I cover, you will have to subscribe to my email list and I will send that to you. All right, till next time.